Hi, I'm Skip Nipper. Welcome to Skip's Corner, the podcast where I tell you about not only Nashville's great baseball history and traditions,
shot to right, a one-hop liner,
but certainly about its past. And you will hear a little bit about its present and future, too.
Yes, he can, and makes the waist-high catch.
There are great stories about Tom Wilson Park, Herschel Greer Stadium, Sulphur Dell, and the players, coaches, and fans who love everything about baseball. And every once in a while, you will get to hear from a special guest who will share their fondness and even passion for the great game.
The high fly ball down the right field corner, going way back, hits a lead-off home run.
Today, I umpired a game in Tennessee vintage baseball at Oaklands Mansion in Murfreesboro, and the game was between the Stones River Scouts and the Phoenix of East Nashville. Now, these teams play what is called, or what is known as, the gentleman's game. Now, gentle ladies play these days too. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of the most rewarding things I have ever done. I have met so many wonderful people, and they play as hard as you think a major league player would play to try to win a game, but to have fun and camaraderie, and that really does mean a lot. And it is one of the things that makes it so enjoyable for me. Now, when the league was formed in 2012, there were only two teams, the Nashville Maroons and the Franklin Farriers. Those teams still exist, and more teams were added over the years, including the Scouts and the Phoenix. Now, generally, historic venues have become playing grounds, such as Oakland's, but include the Hermitage, Ripavilla Plantation in Spring Hill, Carnton Plantation in Franklin, and venues in Chattanooga and Knoxville, too. And sometimes teams travel to different parts of the country to play against other vintage teams in tournaments and festivals. I became an umpire in 2017, and although umpire and arbiter are often used interchangeably, responsibility lies within the action of the game, and let me give you a few instances. First of all, the rules are 1864 modified rules, and I'll get into some of those in a minute. Being a gentleman's game, let's say a play is made on a runner by a defender at a base, and the play is close. Vintage baseball dictates that if the runner was out, he must declare so. And if the runner was safe, the fielder must say so. But that doesn't always happen, because from there it is up to the captains of the two teams to discuss if there is no decision rendered by the runner and the fielder. Now, hopefully with the umpire nearby, they can make a decision, but if they cannot, that's when I would step in. And in the case when I did not see the play closely and am unsure of the result, I am well in my reason to ask a spectator viewing the game what he or she may have seen and make a decision from their witnessing the play. Anyway, there are other instances, and maybe something will come up that I can comment on again in a minute or two, as I wanted to tell you about some of the rules of the 19th century baseball game. Remember, in those days, it was mostly two words, base and ball. And here are some of those rules. Although the game started in the 1840s, or it's generally accepted that that time period is near correct, I'm going to begin in 1860, as that is the year one of the Nashville newspapers first recognized that a baseball game was being played. So, in 1860, the striker, that's the batter, is required to stand on a line that extends 3 feet on either side of home base and is parallel to what is the pitcher's line, where the pitcher throws from. The umpire is instructed to warn a batter before calling strikes if he reportedly did not strike at fair pitched balls, and I have that opportunity in the rules today. And after 3 called strikes, and the last strike called on the first bound or the fly, the batter was out. Now, that's an interesting rule, too. And if the ball was not caught on the first bound or the fly, the batter had to make first base. Now, in 1864, rules changed a little bit more because home plate was round. The pitching was done underhand from 45 feet between two 12-foot lines, 3 feet apart, and stealing was allowed. Now, we don't allow stealing these days because we don't want anybody getting hurt, and that's a good opportunity for some people to twist an ankle trying to steal a base or a fielder trying to make a play against someone stealing. And here's something else that you may not know. Gloves were not worn. We don't use gloves today. One of the first players believed to have used a baseball glove was Doug Allison, a catcher for the Cincinnati Red Stockings, and that was in 1870 because he'd injured his left hand. But the first confirmed glove use was by Charlie Waite, a St. Louis outfielder and first baseman who, in 1875, donned not one, but a pair of flesh-colored gloves, and glove use slowly caught on as more and more players began using different forms of gloves. Now, the umpire stands to the opposite side of the batter, and there's a reason for that, because wherever the ball strikes the ground first determines whether it is fair or foul, and the umpire has to be in position to make that call. So if there's two foul lines at a 45-degree angle towards first and third, and the ball first struck and first lands in foul territory but bounces fair, it's a foul ball, unlike the game today. And conversely, if the ball is hit fair and goes foul, it's a fair ball, no matter where it goes. And foul balls were dead balls back in those days, and the runner could not advance, and the runner could be put on a force once the pitcher has held the ball. Catching the ball on a bounce was an out. First bounce, fielder catches it. We had an instance today where the catcher caught a ball that was tipped. It bounced once behind the batter. The catcher caught it. That's an out. And in these days, baseball bases are 90 feet apart, and they were in those days too. And balls and strikes may be called by the umpire, once again, after warning either the pitcher or the hitter that it is 3 balls for a walk and 3 strikes for an out. And in those days, foul balls were not strikes. They aren't today either. And batters cannot overrun first base or else be put out by a tag. Now, we keep that rule in because we don't want anybody getting hurt. In 1876, the National League began playing with 8 teams: the Philadelphia Athletics, the Boston Red Stockings, the Chicago White Stockings, the Cincinnati Red Stockings, the Hartford Dark Blues, the Louisville Grays, and Mutual of New York, along with the St. Louis Brown Stockings. I think some of those names you'll recognize came from the color of their stockings. And then in these days, pitchers pitched from a 6-foot square. They had to pitch underhanded. The batter can request a high or a low pitch. We don't do that anymore. Strikes were only if the batter swings and misses. And then foul balls still out if caught on a fly or after one bounce. And we've had that happen many times. And like as I said before, if an umpire is unable to see whether a catch has been fairly made, he can confer with spectators or other players as he wishes. Now, moving to 1877, there were new changes. Bases were required to be canvas covered and 15 inches square, the same as the present day size. And home plate was positioned at its current location. The angle formed the intersection of the first and third base lines. And a time at bat is not charged to a batter who walks. And in 1879, all pitched balls must be called strikes, balls, or fouls. So you can see how that rule has changed. And the number of strikes required for a strikeout is determined to be 3. The pitcher had to face a batsman before pitching to him. And then a staff of umpires was first introduced in 1879. Now, the next year, in 1880, base on balls was reduced to 8 called balls, and the base runner was out if hit by a batted ball, and the catcher was required to catch a third strike on the fly to register an out. In 1881, the base on balls was reduced to 7 called balls, and the pitching distance was lengthened to 50 feet. The pitcher was fined for deliberately hitting a batter with the ball, and a spectator who hisses or hoots or insults the umpire could be ejected from the grounds. In 1882, the American League was formed, and it was determined that umpires may not confer with spectators or players, unlike we do today in the vintage game. And in 1883, a foul ball caught on the bounce is no longer an out. It did away with the one bounce rule on foul balls. It had to be caught before it touched the ground. And the pitcher's arm was allowed up to shoulder height when delivering a pitch. In 1884, there were more rules. Almost all restrictions on a pitcher's motion were lifted. He could throw the ball with virtually any motion he chose, provided that he is facing the batter at the moment of a windup, and he's allowed only one step before delivery, and base on balls was reduced to 6 balls. In 1885, the bat may have one flat side. Now, this rule lasted only 1 year, but home base could be made of marble or whitened rubber. And I have read of that being the case at Athletic Park, which later became Sulphur Dell. Back in the 19th century, a marble slab was used for the home plate, and it was also used for the pitcher's plate. Here we see in 1885 that chest protectors worn by catchers and umpires for the first time. And in 1886, the base on balls number was reduced to 5 called balls. And the size of the pitcher's box was reduced from a 6-foot square to 4 by 7 feet. An umpire may introduce a new ball at any time in 1886. And before that year, when a ball was lost, the umpire gave the team 5 minutes to find it before he threw in a new one. And an umpire had to have 2 baseballs at his disposal at all times. Now, in Tennessee vintage baseball, never had it happen, but if a ball is lost, the game is over. We only use 1 ball. And the game has been delayed for several minutes while teams scrounged around in the brush out in the outfield or in foul territory to find a baseball. And here in 1886, a hit batsman for the first time is not charged with a time at bat. In 1887, the number of strikes required for a strikeout is 4, and that rule was adopted for that season only. And the size of the pitcher's box was reduced to 4 feet by 5.5 feet. And the batter is no longer allowed to request a high or a low pitch. And base on balls were recorded as hits for this one season only in 1887. And the batter was awarded first base when hit by a pitch. Home plate is to be made of rubber, the rules say, dropping the marble type, and has to be 12 inches square. And in 1888, the strikeout, once and for all, is set at 3 strikes. A base on balls is not counted as a hit and not charged at a time at bat. And a batter is credited with a base hit when a runner is hit by a batted ball. It is a ground rule double instead of a home run if the ball is batted over the fence in fair territory and the fence is less than 210 feet from home plate. Now at Oaklands, there's a ground rule there that if a ball hit out to right field lands in the brush out there on a fly, it's a foul ball. And if it goes into the brush on the ground or on a bounce, it's a ground rule double. Now, back to 1888, a hit batsman is awarded first base, but also credited with the hit. And then in 1889, a base on balls is reduced to 4 called balls, and there it remains. A sacrifice bunt was statistically recognized, but the batter is charged with a time at bat. But in 1891, substitutions are permitted at any time during the game. But once a player has been substituted for, he cannot re-enter the game. In 1892, it is a ground rule double. Instead of a home run, if the ball is batted over the fence in fair territory and the fence is less than 235 feet from home plate. The next year, in 1893, The pitching distance has increased from 50 feet to 60 feet 6 inches, and it has not been changed since. The pitching box is eliminated, never to be seen again, though present-day pitchers are still said to get knocked out of the box, and a rubber slab 12 inches long and 4 inches wide is substituted. And the pitcher is required to place his rear foot against the slab, and the rear foot must maintain contact with the slab throughout the windup and pitch delivery. This goes back to 1893. And this is the year that a batter credited with a sacrifice bunt is not charged with a time at bat. The next season, in 1894, foul bunts are classified as strikes if the batter has less than 2 strikes. And in 1895, the pitching slab is enlarged to its present size of 24 inches long and 6 inches wide. Bat dimensions are set to present-day values, a maximum of 2 3/4 inches in diameter and a maximum of 42 inches in length. And in 1894, the fly rule, the infield fly rule is adopted. The umpire may call an infield fly when there is 1 out and first, second, and third bases are occupied. Now, the infield fly can be a source of confusion for fans. A foul tip was classified as a strike. A foul tip is a batted ball that goes sharp and direct from the bat to the catcher's hands and is legally caught. You may have remember me saying earlier that happened today where the ball was tipped, and actually because of the 1 bound rule, it bounced once and into the catcher's hands, and that's an out. But in those days, it's not a foul tip unless caught, and any foul tip that is caught is a strike, and the ball is in play. It is not a catch if it is a rebound unless the ball has first touched the catcher's glove or hand. Now we're getting close to the 1900s. In 1898, the first official balk rule. A pitcher is compelled to throw to a base if he makes a motion in that direction. In 1899, the balk rule is refined. A pickoff throw may not be faked when there is a base runner. Once the pitcher begins his motion to deliver a pitch to the batter, the pitcher must complete his motion and pitch the ball. And then lastly, 1900, the shape of home plate is changed from a 12-inch square to a 5-sided figure 17 inches wide. Now, I'll stop there because it was about this time that Nashville became a member of the newly formed Southern Association that began play in 1901 until it folded in 1961. Nashville and Birmingham were the only 2 cities represented in the Southern Association every year during its existence. But do you get a sense of how different or how much it resembles the game being played today? I hope you do, and although the Tennessee vintage baseball season is winding down, you still have opportunities to watch the game, and I really think you'd enjoy it. And so what you do, you go to TennesseeVintageBaseball.com, and you can see where games are being played in the weeks ahead. You can also check the standings. And the season culminates in season-ending games at the Hermitage, where the teams will be playing a tournament for the Sulphur-Dale Cup. And remember, no swearing, no spitting, and no gloves. It's a gentleman's game, and I think you'll really enjoy seeing it as much as I have being a part of it.